Radio Espial is a series of podcasts brought to you across the internet by TIPM Media. Presented by investigative journalist Mick Rooney, it covers a host of topics from international media, publishing, aviation, and technology. Thank you for listening to this podcast today.
Here we are again, Radio Espial, and this is episode 6. Let's go. Great guest for you on Radio Espial for episode 6. James Nixon will be joining us very soon, and rejoining us, I might say, because James has spoken to us before. We're doing an update tonight on Malaysia Airlines MH370, and we're also going to do a little small feature on the late great aviation journalist Ben Sandilands.
Radio Espial is a series of podcasts brought to you across the internet by TIPM Media. Presented by investigative journalist Mick Rooney, it covers a host of topics from international media, publishing, aviation, and technology. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. Radio Espial. We explore and discover together.
Okay, welcome to the program. We operate in podcast and videocast. You can catch up with the website on www.radioespial.com, Facebook, /Radio Espial, Twitter @Radio Espial. Let's get rid of all the promotional stuff and let's get on with it. Okay, as I say, we're catching up with Malaysia Airlines flight 370 and what's kind of been happening in recent months. We have another great guest coming up for you. It's James Nixon, retired Captain James Nixon. He has been on before, and I'm delighted to say he's joining us again. Before we go to James Nixon, I also want to reflect on Ben Sandilands. Ben Sandilands, for some of you who are not quite up in the aviation world, Ben Sandilands, really 60 years of experience covering aviation, many other general subjects as a journalist. Ben was from Australia. Really, from me, I got to know Ben a little bit, not as much as my guest. Some of you a little bit into aviation will know that Ben Sandilands was the writer for Plain Talking, which was a blog for Crikey. Crikey's aviation blog really was the go-to place for many of us in the aviation world, and we just wanted to reflect a little bit on Ben Sandilands, who tragically passed away last Friday. But first of all, just as the background for the main part of our program, Malaysia Airlines flight. Again, if you're new to the program, we cover lots of stuff: media, aviation, technology, publishing, writing, a whole host of different things. But our main subject, as I say tonight, is Malaysia Airlines flight 370. We have a number of updates that I'm going to talk to James Nixon about, just for us to catch up on as to what exactly is happening with a potential search. But just the very brief background, I'll keep this short and quick. Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 was a scheduled international passenger flight. Disappeared on the 8th of March 2014 while flying from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Malaysia, to Beijing Capital International Airport in China. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER operated by Malaysia Airlines. It last made contact with air traffic control over the South China Sea in and around the Agari waypoint, just before it approached Vietnam airspace, and that happened about 40 minutes after takeoff from KLIA. Malaysia military claimed that they continued to track the aircraft as it deviated westwards from its planned flight path to Beijing and crossed back over the Malaysia peninsula. It ultimately left the range of military radar, and according to a British satellite company, Inmarsat, they believe they not tracked it, but ultimately understood that it flew for many hours onwards into the southern Indian Ocean, and really from perhaps debris over the last 3.5 years, we've learned that is the likelihood that's where the aircraft ultimately went. The aircraft was carrying 12 Malaysian crew members and 227 passengers across 15 nations. We are where we are, but let's hopefully that we'll catch up shortly. As I say, before we talk to James, we're gonna firstly reflect on the late Ben Sandilands, who passed away after a long illness. So, without further ado, let's go and talk to James. Okay, welcome back. I'm delighted to say that retired Captain James Nixon is back to join us again. I gave a brief intro as to what we're going to be discussing tonight. So really, straight away, I talked a little bit the fact that we'll be reflecting on the journalism career of Ben Sandilands. James, I think you knew Ben a lot better than I did.
G'day, how are you, Mick? Well, I was one of Ben's snitches in the later years.
You refer to yourself as the go-to pilot.
No, he was my go-to journalist.
Oh, I see.
Because when you're an airline pilot, you're flying most of the time and sleeping for as much as you can. So you actually, a lot of stuff passes you by. And so when you needed to find out what's going on in the industry, the first thing and the only thing to do is to buy a crikey.com subscription and see what Ben's on about.
Yeah.
As you know, he's a prolific tweeter, so anything that was going down, Ben would let you know straight away. But he's certainly the go-to guy for many years. Unfortunately, we had some very good Australian aviation journalists, and by one they fell away and sold out to
the larger
organisations or the newspapers.
Media, yeah.
Well, and were some of the some of the newspapers that they worked for, or TV stations, whatever. Were big recipients of advertising from the big airlines, naturally. So, and the manufacturers. Well, Ben didn't care about that. He was ruthless, and he was the man to go to find out the truth.
Absolutely, yeah, and of course, the reason why we're talking about Ben today is because sadly he passed away last Friday after a long illness, and I think you summed it up best, that he leaves a huge void, because as you've sort of briefly touched on, we're now in an age of media, and we discussed this last time you were on as well, where media has changed in that no matter what area it is, be it technology, be it aviation, be it politics, we're seeing more and more talking heads who really are just generally reporters and journalists, but we're seeing the industry of media move much more away from essentially what Ben was. Although he was great even at writing about general subjects, his main area was, aviation, even, the shipping industry. He could talk about humanities. He could talk about so many subjects with equal professionalism. And we're losing an awful lot of those journalists.
And he was an old style reporter. He didn't go to university initially. He went straight out of school, became a cadet journalist at the Sydney Morning Herald, and learnt how to be a real reporter. And I think that came through time and time in his work. But he was also an accomplished mountain climber, and was in the first expedition to climb Ball's Pyramid, which is east of Lord Howe Island in the Pacific. It's like an Australian protectorate, and that's off New South Wales. And in 1965, these guys went and climbed it. Now, I recommend, if anyone's remotely interested in Ben's life, have a look at Ball's Pyramid and see how this thing sticks out of the Pacific Ocean, and the problem these guys to climb it. His reports back to the Sydney Morning Herald were being listened to, because they'd communicate by radio, and then a Morse operator would send the reports back to the Sydney General Post Office.
And I think he also during that particular event, he proved himself to be a pretty nifty swimmer as well.
He did, because he realised he was being scooped by the other journalists who wasn't doing the climbing and wasn't part of the expedition. So when they got to the top, he crawled down the bottom and then jumped in the shark-infested waters and swam out to a boat.
And the boat took them
straight to the Morse operator so that he could put the copy in and scoop everybody. So he was one of those rollicking old journos who had done everything. He climbed Mount Blanc, he'd done a climb in the Himalayas, and he was... his previous editors say that you should get him to write on anything, and he would be able to turn out. Yeah, bring it alive.
Again, talking about Ben, I would recommend anybody, I think in the last 24 hours, Sarah White at Crikey has...
Sally
White has written a terrific obituary on Ben that really very much captures the sense of who Ben was. Like I said, you knew him an awful lot better than I did. Most of my interactions were through Twitter. What always struck me with Ben is late at night, you could be, well, probably early in the morning for him, you could be having a right ding-dong discussion, back and forward, and arguing, and sometimes getting heated. But Ben had this great aspect of, you could talk to him the following day, and despite that things might have got heated the previous evening, there will be no reflection of that in any of the interactions. And he had that great ability as well, because people would have thought, you know, he could be a bit difficult at times, because he was very to the point, spoke his mind, and really I think that's very much what people respected of him, and it shone through.
I think so. Well, that's the old reporter coming out, because you don't want to kill your sources. So even if you disagreed with somebody, the next day you had to make up, and otherwise you'd cut off the source. And he was one to. I mean, there must be a million journos out there trying to get his family to give them his contacts book, because he knew everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of his best friends, wasn't it? I think he was the head of PR, I think, in British Airways, I think, for a while. Yeah, so look, you know, it's obviously a sad time, and you think, you know, who's going to fill Ben's boots nowadays, and really that's, you know, there is nobody, you know, that you would instinctively think. I've just found that an awful lot of media coverage when it comes to the subject of aviation is very much, as I say, it's written and spoken about generally by people who don't really know a great deal about it. They're just general reporters, and it does tend to be heavily sensationalized, rather than spoke about it in detail.
If it doesn't include the words stall, spin, horror, crash, flames, burning, smoke, it doesn't run. And look, there's an old journalism adage called, which is used by editors a lot: if it bleeds, it leads. And that's all these people want to know about aviation. They want to see that it's shocking and terrifying, and they want to scare people. But it's pretty much a boring business. I mean, most of the time it's taking people from A to B, and there's a humongous number of people involved in each flight, and each one of these flights goes on, you know, there's 1 million people in the sky right now, and it's completely boring, but it's made of lots and lots of characters, and people like Ben used to gather all that information so that when there was a minor incident or an engine shut down or a return to land or something like that, that he could actually talk to the people who knew what was going on. And if it means that you have to give a journalist a lot of time, and unfortunately, because there's no money in journalism anymore, no one pays for it. In fact, you know, for the last 10 years, he's been working for Crikey on this blog, getting paid, you know, piece rate on performance. So, you know, no one pays you anymore to sit around and investigate and to get to know all the people, and that's the problem with journalism. And sadly, we've lost Ben, and I don't know who's going to come and fill his place. And as I said in my release, you know, we're all stuffed now because we haven't got someone who's like Ben to look after us. And
he, as we move into our main subject this evening, Ben, very much, almost, perhaps not quite on a weekly basis, but certainly on a bi-weekly basis, would very much cover the case of Malaysia Airlines MH370, and again usually cut through to the chase, no matter what was being discussed, whether it was a new search, a piece of debris turning up, no matter what it was, Ben had that ability to just go right to the heart of what it, you know, that current discussion.
Yes, and unfortunately, because my emails backwards and forwards with him intersposed in my mind with the articles he wrote, sometimes I blur on remembering what his personal thoughts were and what he had put in print, and sometimes I'd read some stuff that he had written where he'd actually give, you know, credence to somebody who was more of a conspiracy theorist, and I would look back on it and wonder if that was his thoughts or not. But of course, his thoughts were he loved calling a spade, and if he did that, if he didn't do it publicly, he certainly did it privately, and that's what everyone loved him for.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and obviously, our thoughts are with Ben's family at this difficult time.
Yeah.
James, let's move on to MH370, the latest developments. There are a number of critical developments. Before we specifically talk about the search or the possibility of a renewed search, I know you had some thoughts, and we sort of briefly touched on this in other forums. The final report from the ATSB, the Australian Safety and Transport Board, came out, I think it was last month, some 440 pages, I could be certainly 400 plus pages. Perhaps like me, you were a little bit disappointed as to what was in that report, so can we maybe flesh out a little bit more why you had some disappointments with the report?
Well, I've had some problems with the report all along, insofar as, there's, I don't know, email addresses of probably 1,000 pilots who fly the Boeing 777, easily obtainable from just a few airlines. And instead of going and asking the pilot group, and maybe another 2,500 you could easily get from Airbus to find out what pilots think themselves, they I think they got a core of 7 777 pilots or 5 777 pilots where they asked them specific questions about autopilot use, and based their whole search around that. And so they've lost the opportunity. When they went to discuss how the plane went in the water, they put a lot of weight on some person trying to fly an airliner into the ocean, and they looked at a lot of cases, but they were cases basically in Australia and New Zealand, cases that small airliners and cases of hypoxia and small planes, they really didn't use the resources that they could have. And I point out in my book specifically, there's two. When you're talking about a plane going into the water at high speed, we look for comparisons where we have valid data, and they didn't use Space Shuttle Challenger, and they didn't use Swiss Air 111. And I think certainly Swiss Air 111 is a textbook case of what would expect to be happening. So all the way through, I thought they were pretty weak in those areas. And then their final report to come out, and they've put a large amount of weight on the simulator track that they say was flown by the captain's flight simulator program.
Yeah.
No one knows if his son was playing with that program. There were 640 interviews done by the homicide squad in Malaysia. They cleared all the crew and passengers in the end, but certainly they started with all the crew. And the evidence from his brother-in-law, I think was his that he hadn't used the computer for a year, and his wife was on it and would get rid of it. And whether or not he used it regularly up to that time, none of this has come out. So in my mind, you have to really discount that evidence. But correctly, they examined that evidence and said, well, if it was flown into the Southern Ocean, or the South Indian Ocean, these tracks have to be compared and looked at. Great, and they've done a fantastic job of that, in their opinion. They're just saying, well, this is a possibility, and we investigate all possibilities. Well, they investigated a few possibilities, and they didn't include in their report anything in detail of what I've just said to you about the captain being exonerated, except for one paragraph where they said, and I haven't got it in front of me, so you'll have to look at it yourself, where they say, we discount that the captain was the cause of this crash, and we don't believe this happened. Well,
no, I think they said something along the lines as well in it that and I think this they kind of towed the line that the that came out in the leaked Malaysian police report, that essentially the flight seminar had been looked at, and there was nothing conclusive to be drawn from it.
Yeah, but also they exonerated him in one line, and or made it ambiguous. And the thing is, if you're going to hang someone's character out to dry, well, you've got to
back it up.
You got to back it up, and you got to say the full story, which they didn't do. And so I, as an operating pilot, sit back and get angry because we still are looking for the flight data recorder and the wreckage. Where we haven't got to the investigation stage yet. We're still looking for an aeroplane. Yeah,
and that's the critical thing to remember. As we move towards discussing the actual search or potential of a new search, again, there's been an awful lot of speculation. We know recently, now when I say recently, rather recently it came to light that there was a couple of more pieces of debris discovered in Madagascar, which were due to be handed over. My own sources tell me that those two pieces of debris have actually still, despite stuff about, from the Malaysian Transport Minister, Minister Low, that some of his associates from the Annex 13 team were travelling out there to deal with the handover of debris. My understanding is that's never actually happened, and that debris still remains out in Madagascar. This, of course, coincided with another sad event, and that was essentially the gunning down of a Malaysian consular. And of course, I think Ben spoke about this to reflect back on our previous discussion, and has stressed that, look, we do not know whether there was any connection with the case of MH370, or this was just something that happened within that country that had to do with internal politics or history of people involved. Your thoughts?
No, well, I'm just completely intrigued by the whole thing and completely sceptical. I've been to the grassy knoll where JFK was shot. I've seen the white X on the road, and we're still talking about the JFK assassination.
Yeah, in recent weeks.
And the longer it goes on, MH370 is becoming the same sort of thing, and I've stopped reading a large amount of information because we're still going through this flight second by second, trying to work out what happened. Well, when we find out where the aircraft is, then we can really work out backwards what happened. That's how you do crash investigation, but it's getting curiouser and curiouser.
It certainly is.
The longer it continues.
Now,
and I mean, you look at the number of people. There was a fantastic movie called Executive Action in the 1970s about the JFK conspiracy theories, and they just went through and they listed the number of people who had died in unnatural circumstances since JFK had been killed, and it was like 157 or something like that. Car accidents, people who died from stabbings and murders, and by the time time you get to the end of that movie, you've got all these bodies piling up, and you think, crikey, it's all has to be rated. Well, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe that's just life. And so a lot of this stuff I refuse to get stressed out about until we find some information that we can look at. Now, if you're telling me that there's 2 pieces of wreckage that haven't been given to the investigators, that upsets me as an operating or retired operating captain. I don't like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Where are they? Have we got photos? Let's get them.
We have the photos of the debris itself. In fact, one. Although nothing has been spoken about this debris in an official capacity as regards analysis of it, because obviously it's still there. It would actually transpire that one of them shows highly likely that it probably is certainly at the very least a piece of aircraft wreckage. The other we're unsure of. But as you say, the concern is, why the hell are they still there? And granted, if some tragic event happened within Madagascar, that is for the Madagascan police to deal with. But there's still an ongoing technical and criminal investigation here, and let's get on with it. And as of yet, we still have no confirmation that debris ever arrived back in either Kuala Lumpur or was sent via Canberra in Australia, where some of the debris has been gone. But yeah, it's a big concern if that's still the case. We've learned, or certainly I have learned through some of the next of kin, that around about March, and I wasn't aware of this until some weeks back, that around about March, some of the next of kin attended a meeting with the I believe the Malaysian Minister of Transport was there, and briefed the relatives and essentially let them know that, you know, somebody might be coming on board here later. There is a company that's made some kind of offer, but it's very early days yet, and the relatives didn't get any further updates about this. Ultimately, Voice 370, the representative group of the families, in August went public and announced, here's the name of the company. We've known about this for quite some time. We've let the authorities get on with it and deal with a potential offer or resumption. We've now in recent months found out that actually Fugro Worldwide also made some kind of offer to continue the search, and we're also now learning that there was potentially a Malaysian local company who also made some form of offer to be involved with the search. And here we are now with potentially 3 offers that were put on the table. Perhaps the sounding out by the next of kin in recent months and weeks has pushed things forward a little bit, to the point that we now have all the protagonists in all this named. We now know that Ocean Infinity is it would seem from the press releases from the both Darren Chester in Australia and Minister Lowe and his subordinate, his deputy Aziz, that it would seem that Ocean Infinity would be the preferred choice to potentially restart, resume the search. Your own thoughts again?
I believe Ocean Infinity has the contract now, and they've even clarified finder's fees tied to 90 days, and so let them at it.
Although let's stress though that formally we've had no absolute declaration that contract was signed. This is happening. We don't quite know that yet.
I think the ABC News wire had a quote by Darren Chester, and I think it's all go a few days ago. That's what I'm assuming, having read the news wires. I've since given up trying to get press releases out of the Malaysian government. No, look at
the Malaysian government.
To try and get
they don't even keep the official.
We need you.
They don't even keep the official MH370 website and its press release core area on the website up to date. So it's a nightmare.
Have you tried to do a search on? Oh, it's just I'm the son of a librarian, and every time I try and find anything on their website, I curse. My mother comes out in me, and I curse these people, saying, let's just do it by date and time, in order or reverse chronological order. I don't care, but it's just so difficult to find this information. So the ABC Newswire tends to be pretty good because they back it up with interviews with Darren Chester and the Australian government. So we know, well, at the moment they had a story saying that Ocean Infinity's got it. There's a 90-day deal. They get paid a lot of money. I think it's $20 million if they find it in 90 days.
This is the proverbial no fine, no fee.
Yeah, that's right. And of course they're going to go for that rather than Fuego, because Fuego is just saying we'll do it cheaper. But Ocean Infinity's got this new technology and they reckon they're going to find it quickly. And the ATSB is going to give them as much support. Well, all of Australia is going to give them as much support as they need, but no cash. But there's a lot of people who are working for us, for the Australian government. So you can say that we're giving a large amount of money in terms of staff wages. So they're looking at having a go. Now, I just want someone to either say we're going to search for it or we're not. If we're not, great, because I'm sure James Cameron, have you interviewed him? James Cameron, who found the Titanic. I mean, this is a Monty for at least 2 movies, maybe 3, and I'm just sitting back waiting for him to say, are you all done, all bets off? Okay, when you guys are finished, we'll come in and we'll find it and we'll make movies about it and we'll get our money back that way.
And we've also had David Mearns also in discussions with the family to advise them, suggesting that he's also someone that could be there, not just an advisory role but a more hands-on role if essentially any official resumption of a search falls apart.
But you're a journo. Has anyone rung James Cameron and said, does this pique your interest? Are you remotely interested in MH370? Because he found the Titanic. I mean, the guy's got a history. He's gone deeper than anyone else in the world in his search endeavour. Someone ring him up and find out if he's interested. Because if Ocean Infinity don't find it in 90 days, what happens then?
Is that it? Because it's a slight red light to me that the Malaysian negotiation team, in discussions with Ocean Infinity, have suggested or proffered that there's a time limit on this. Does this 90-day window concern you, or do you think that's just more about potentially, if we can get this up and going, look, you've got December, you've got January, you've got February, you've potentially even got March prior to the 4th anniversary of the aircraft going missing. Do you think it's got more to do with that, or are you like me that has some concerns that this 90-day thing has been floated? In other words, we're going to search for the aircraft, we're not going to charge you anything if we don't find it, you only pay us, here's the fee, or at least a window of a fee, which is quite exceptional to me. There's a hell of a big difference between $20 million dollars and $70 million, but however, there may be technical aspects as to why there's such a huge gap between the minimum it could be and the maximum it could be. But do you share concerns like me that Malaysia have kind of introduced this time window of 90 days?
Well, yeah, you've got to ask yourself who was in the room during the negotiations and what were they about, and who made that 90-day claim, whether Ocean Infinity said we're doing it based on a strict meteorological window. Our gear works well in these months of the year, and we're going to pull out of the water on that date, so we'll only be doing it for 90 days. Now, none of us know what was happening in that interview or that meeting, so we can't really comment.
Okay, I understand it. No more comment about that. Regarding where they should search, should that be a matter for Ocean Infinity? Essentially, you're going to be doing this independently. You don't get out, and if you don't find it, you search wherever the hell you want. Or do you believe Ocean Infinity will concentrate on the area that the recent ATSB report has prioritised, essentially north of the previous search box, the search zone?
Yeah, I think there's only one place to search for this aircraft, and that's on the 7th Arc. And in the position that's now been refined as being refined by the CSIR drift.
I think this is somewhere around the 35th parallel,
France. Yeah, it's 35th parallel, and it's on the 7th Arc, and maybe expanding that area out to include a larger area than was previously thought. But I don't think they're going to go anywhere else.
No, I certainly don't see Ocean Infinity going anywhere else. I think they will work as best they can with
where do you reckon the plane is?
Where do I reckon it is?
The plane is?
Just like I don't have any specific theory on MH370. All I have ever said is I do believe that the satellite data, the Inmarsat data, is reasonably correct and accurate. I've always felt that we are trying to extract far more out of the Inmarsat data than we should. It's never been used in this way before to specifically locate it. It's not a geolocation tool. It just gives a broad area of where the plane is. I do believe it's in the southern Indian Ocean. I'll hands up, I will say very early on, I was... No.
Where do you think it is now? I think we've got to ask everyone we speak to.
No, sure. No, I believe...
We're getting people saying it's in Mauritius and all...
I think an awful lot of the recent... What's convinced me more, I did think it was much more southerly. The crucial piece of evidence that came out in the Royal Malaysian Police report that helped me at least corroborate that the aircraft definitely turned back. It definitely crossed over the Malaysian peninsula. It definitely was over Penang. Is that I didn't just have to believe this primary radar, military radar, that the Malaysian government has insisted that they had, but no show. But we can't show you now. Once we had the corroborating data of the co-pilot's mobile phone being detected by Cellcom, that then made me feel, okay, well, whatever about it going up further up the Malacca Strait, I think I can at least get to south of Penang, wherever it went after there. I ultimately do believe it's down in the southern Indian Ocean. I think the Inmarsat data is broadly correct, although, as I say, I think more is being extracted out of it than necessarily it can stand up to. The debris has been the most crucial part of it from me in regards proving that it is in the southern Indian Ocean. And I think I've certainly read enough drift analysis reports to suggest that the latest drift analysis from Cicero and David Griffin is broadly correct, that they should have always went further north. And that what drew me to the southern theory that maybe it went for was that I wasn't willing to fully accept the Malaysian military radar. In other words, I was more going, I can live with the Inmarsat data, but I can't fully accept this Malaysian military radar that I've never seen and nobody's ever seen. In other words, did it go south earlier, much earlier did it simply cross the Malaysian peninsula and go straight south? Did it ever go, or what I've always referred to as, did it ever do the Malacca mystery tour? You know, did it ever go up towards northern Sumatra and come back around and then go south? You know, that's what I was never sure of. I think, to be fair to the Malaysians, as much as they still will not show us data on proper radar screen captures, although the whole nonsense about the Lido thing, and I'm supposed to be interviewing you, not you having me talking. So look, I do believe they're much closer now to finding it. But at one stage, I did believe there was a strong case to argue that it could have went much further south, because of course we had those 3 or 4 French, I think Chinese satellite images of very large objects. This was sometime around the end of late March 2014, which, you know, I'm sure all of us that morning we woke up thought, this is it. You know, they found the debris.
Here it is.
And of course, it never turned out.
I think we're all agreed that it's in the South Indian Ocean. So how does a Malaysian, I think it's a minister, stand up and say it's in the South China Sea? We're looking in the wrong spot. How come that gets in?
Well, look,
you know, these red herrings get thrown in, so they make you think.
Look, it's an opposition. It's an opposition minister, so I think there's been politics being played here. Scoring points in politics, I think, has been played there, and it's not fair to anybody. Least of all the next of kin. It's not fair to anybody to be throwing red herrings into the, you know, in a parliament, in a you know, a political parliament, to be throwing out stories like that. It's absolute crap. You know, we all know the data and the debris, the physical debris alone does not support any nonsense about the southern China Sea, the Gulf of Thailand. You know, it doesn't support that. So
Mick, it's not in Kazakhstan anymore.
No, it's not in Kazakhstan. I backtracked out there, and I've still not convinced Jeff that it's definitely not there.
No, I don't think he'll ever be convinced.
No, Jeff's going to kill me now tonight. Mrs. Later Clinton. On. I'll get an email from him now. What were you saying about me?
Hi, Jeff. It's not in Kazakhstan. Trust me.
Honest, I promise.
But, you know, we've all got concerns. How can you fly it? Well, let's just forget about ATC in Malaysia. Okay, pretend Malaysian doesn't exist anymore. But the Singaporeans, how does it fly over Indonesia and no one pick it up? Are you telling me they don't have military radar? So there's all these questions that do lead people to continue. Yeah, sure.
And that was my question on the Malaysian military radar. When it was like, we have it but we can't show it, but we'll give you a load of cartoons and diagrams to say what it is.
And the people, like,
nobody else said, well, you're telling us this is where it went, that's where it went up this way, across that way, up that way. Well, nobody else, Indonesia, Thailand, no one else has ever said they saw the plane. I think the closest was Thailand, who said, yeah, we did capture it, but we captured it just before it disappeared, prior to the Agari waypoint. And beyond that, nobody else has seen it. No.
Anyway, so it leaves so much open for speculation until we find it, and I think Ocean Infinity's got a good chance of finding it, because they're the only ones going to go to the place that David Griffin reckons it is, and I trust him probably more than anyone else at this point in time. I think the drift modeling's been fantastic.
Yeah, I think, and obviously everybody's hoping that essentially will begin hopefully this summer season in your part of the world, in the southern hemisphere, from, well, if not December, then maybe hopefully January. We can only hope. The last thing I hope is that this goes belly up and we get just another list of excuses and reasons why the Malaysian government have decided that actually, no, we're not going to bother with this. We couldn't reach a deal. I think we're back to square one again, but at least Ocean Infinity have put themselves out there as a potential independent party who could work with somebody else.
Yeah, certainly. And I think someone should write a letter to James Cameron and see if he's interested. I've been saying that for a year now. No one has, But
I'll see. I'll see. Can I get his email and I'll drop him a mail and we'll see what he says.
Good idea. Yeah, and get David Griffin on board. Have you because he's a fantastic product.
I'm fairly sure that you suggested that last time, and I'm fairly sure I fired him off an email. I didn't hear back from him, so I think if he's listened to this, David, I'm sending you another email. Answer it this time.
Come on, David.
Just before you go,
do it, David.
Just before you go, right behind you is another book we never mentioned. This is Sleeping for Pilots and Cabin Crew. I take it this is not going to happen on the aircraft during a flight.
Well, it does. In fact, it's the best book in the world. It tells you how to sleep. It tells you about the NASA nap.
No, but not while you're flying.
Sleeping for pilots and cabin crew and other insomniacs. I have photos of people. No. Sleeping for Pilots and Cabin Crew and Other Insomniacs is a book I wrote to help pilots and cabin crew get to grip with long-haul flying. The sleep patterns of these people are worse than shift workers. You're a journo. You've been in shift work all your life. The problem in this business of shift working is you feel like crap, but at least you get 5 or 6 days of crap in a row. So if you're doing night shift, your body gets into some cycle. But if you're flying from somewhere like, say, the Middle East to London and having 18 hours off or 20 hours off and then coming back, you fly up in the afternoon and you're flying back the next day overnight. And then you have a night back in your home bed, and then you're flying off and doing the same thing or worse, going eastwards. So the moving sleep cycle is the hardest to get around. So I investigated the 20 different factors that that affect your sleeping, from food and alcohol and water and mosquitoes and bed bugs and everything that affects your sleep. And that's the first half of the book, and that's it's mildly amusing. The part 2 is the bit that tells you about life and tells you how to sleep whenever you want, for as long as you want. And that's the trick of how to survive on the road in a moving sleep cycle. And it also includes lots of things like cockpit rest, sleeping in crew rest, sleeping in the cockpit, using the 24-minute NASA nap that you get some really good effects before you get into the deep sleep cycles. And it ends up with 23 tips on how to survive a long-haul flight as a passenger. And it also teaches you how to land a plane. So it's quite a fantastic book, and it's been out there for quite a while.
There's a lot in there.
You can get it on Kindle. It's a lot in there, yeah. It's a lot of it. It took me a long time to write.
James Nixon.
In fact...
author of Sleeping for Pilots and Cabin Crew. I hope the next time we speak we'll have more positive news on Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. Again, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're always very welcome. You take care, and we'll speak again soon. And as we sign off, let's just both say thank you, Ben Sandilands. Thank you, Ben Sandilands. You got the scoop.
Years of amazing journalism. You got the scoop. Yeah. He's up there now, interviewing the captain and crew. Didn't give me the answers.
Take care, James.
Pleasure.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for listening, and thanks again to retired Captain James Nixon for joining us. All of the links that we refer to in this program will be down in the wherever you see this podcast or videocast, whether it's YouTube, SoundCloud, look, wherever. JamesNixon.com. Go there. He's a lovely little piece on Ben Sandilands. I'm also going to put up the Ben's link to his Plain Talking blog. Really, anybody who doesn't know Ben Sandilands, I'd highly recommend you go there. There's a terrific archive. It's only just very sad that we won't hear from Ben again, writing as an aviation journalist. Thank you for joining me again. I'm not going to go through all the promotional stuff. www.radioespial.com. You can see all the links there. And thank you for joining us. And this won't be the last program on MH370. I'm hoping to have another guest lined up for the following episode 7 program. So join us again for that. And again, thank you all. God bless Ben.